Chapter 6, Law of the Jungle. I got home around 2 a.m. and found my roommate Ben asleep on the couch. I picked up the remote and switched off the television, then found Ben's coat laying on the floor and draped it over him. He made a sound, something between a snore and a snort, but didn't wake up. I went to my room and fell asleep without setting my alarm, and woke up after 10 the next morning to continue working on my paper at the computer lab. I finally settled on the conclusion that life is hard, live it anyway. Everyone agreed on the inevitability of suffering and confusion, but meaning is guaranteed to no one. It wasn't great, but it was something. Just the thought of finishing the paper brought such relief that I gave up on finding the answer I once hoped for. Around 5 o'clock, I printed out my latest draft and walked home for some dinner before Ski dropped by to pick me up and study at the library again. He pounded on the apartment door 3 times, then opened it and ran up the stairs 3 steps at a time into the living room. "Hey, Ben," he said in a cheery tone, "you gonna just sit and watch TV all night?" Tormenting my slightly overweight couch potato roommate was Ski's favorite activity whenever he paid us a visit. I had met Ben the day before classes began when I moved into the apartment. I met Ski the next day in philosophy, and Ben added the class a few days later. An entertaining circus of egos and intellects began immediately. "Yep," Ben answered without looking away from the screen. "Well, at least you could sit on the other side of the couch. I've noticed this side sinks down a lot lower than the other side." Ben looked up momentarily, annoyed. Ski smiled, seeing that he had found a sensitive spot. Ben looked away, then stood up and walked to the fridge for a soda. "Hey, Spencer," Ski shouted toward my room. "You're not going to believe this. I just saw Ben exercising. You told me he never did that." I walked into the living room with my coat and backpack. "Ready?" I asked Ski. I had long since given up telling Ski to go easy on Ben. Any kind of reaction from anyone at all only added fuel to the fire, and the only solution was to stop talking and walk away. Ski was the most sarcastic person I had ever met, but I liked him anyway. His sarcasm probably had something to do with his upbringing. His parents were wealthy and distant. Rather than raising him themselves, they had depended on nannies and boarding schools. After graduating from high school, he finally had enough. Instead of accepting the full-ride scholarships offered to him by several Ivy League schools, he informed his parents that he would plan his own life from then on. "If you decline Harvard," they asked puzzledly, "where will you go?" "Utah," Ski answered randomly, and so he did. During the next 3 years, he only went home 3 or 4 times. At first, he expected some kind of reaction to his first bid for independence, perhaps an argument about his choices or a new tension in their relationship, but found nothing more than an occasional confused expression on his parents' faces. "It's funny that it never occurred to me," he told me one of the few times we spoke about his home life, "that we never had a relationship to begin with." When I probed further, asking how he felt about all that, he slipped back into his playful, sarcastic mode and wouldn't give a straight answer. I finally gave up and accepted him the way he was, playing along when I felt like it and ignoring him the rest of the time. "Where are you guys going?" asked Ben, anxious to not be left out. Ben's past was the exact opposite of Ski's. His father was his best friend and vice versa. Together, they had won the state high school science fair 2 years in a row. After listening to so many stories about his father's accomplishments, I once made the mistake of asking him a question. "Yeah," I said, "but what do you guys do for fun?" What I got was a 40-minute rant about how much fun they had together, but it wasn't anything I recognized as a good time. They would sit at the table after dinner, for example, and create and solve geometry problems. "What's the circumference of the Earth?" his father would quiz. "That's easy, Dad. 24,452 miles, roughly 1,000 miles per time zone." "Easy, eh? Well, what if you tied a string all the way around the world and then raised it an inch? How big of a gap would the ends of the string leave?" Then they pulled out their pencils and protractors and calculated the answer. "Got it," Ben would declare, pretending not to notice that his father had found the answer first. "Now, add that much string to complete the loop," his father would continue. "Then pinch the string and lift. How high does the string go when you pull it tight against the other side of the world?" And on and on and on they went. And on and on and on Ben went, telling me story after story after story. I was fascinated at how boring it all sounded. But even that fascination soon wore thin, and I learned not to ask Ben questions unless I had somewhere I needed to go within the next few minutes. Ben was a very friendly person, but all of his father's attention and praise had gone to his head. And now all his relationships seemed to be an effort to fit in socially while convincing everyone to accept his superiority over them. Not a very endearing combination. So when Ben asked where we were going, I had mixed feelings about telling him about our study session. One more person to look up answers would help, but there were costs to pay. My momentary hesitation was all Ski needed to take over. For a ride in Spencer's new car, he answered. Really? Why didn't you tell me you got a new car? Ben asked. I raised one eyebrow at him and waited. It didn't take long. Where are you guys really going? Study session, I answered. Philosophy? Why didn't you guys tell me? Ben knew philosophy was the only class Ski and I had together. Now he became the picture of energy as he bounded to his room to grab his coat and pack while simultaneously trying to tie his shoelaces. Ski looked at me as if annoyed that I had let Ben in on our study session, but we both knew there would be significantly less work with him along. Ben's life consisted of television, studying, and chattering away while trying to act like one of the guys. We could stand him being around as long as we didn't get too much at once. Unfortunately for us, too much didn't take long to add up. We reached the library after a 15-minute walk through the falling snow, listening to Ben chatter the whole way, despite his huffing and puffing while trying to keep up as we walked up the hill to campus. Once inside the study room that Ski had reserved until midnight, the three of us shed our coats and spread our books and notes across the table. Ben actually enjoyed tests. It gave him a chance to show off his high scores. I didn't understand how, after all this time, he could still expect everyone to fawn over him, pat him on the back, and want to be his friend because of it. So it almost surprised me when he began to complain now. Why do we have to have finals anyway? He whined. It almost surprised me, but not quite. I quickly saw that he was only trying to create a club of common opinion once Ski and I added our complaints, but we both knew better than to join in. The law of the jungle, Ski answered instead. Ben looked at him. What are you talking about? Ben asked. Whenever he didn't understand something, he liked to make it sound like it hadn't been explained clearly, like it was someone else's fault. Whenever he caught on quickly to a concept in class, he raised his hand and commented on it just so everyone would know he understood. He either didn't notice or didn't care that even the professor was getting annoyed and trying to ignore his raised hand. The law of the jungle, you know, only the strong survive, Ski answered. Excuse me, but I fail to see the connection. Ben knew all too well that he had bought his way into our group by looking up answers in advance, and knowing his security, he showed no qualms about taking the liberty to act obnoxious now. It wasn't in the text, Ben, Ski retorted. He never bothered to mask his feelings about Ben's self-centered attitude, or about anything else, for that matter. But if you'll take your nose out of your books for a moment, you'll find it everywhere around you. Well, not only the strong survive finals, Ben countered. What about cheaters, or hard workers, or students who avoid all the hard classes? Don't you get it? Ski asked, shaking his head in mock disbelief at Ben's obtuseness. I never said you had to be smart. Lions aren't the only animals left in the jungle. Technically, Ben began to object, lions don't live in the jungle. Shut up, Ski commanded. We know. Technically, I began, trying to shift the focus of the conversation before this little tournament of egos got out of control and I didn't get the answers for the study guide. We came here for a study session, not a pointless argument. Technically, Ski continued, ignoring my redirect, we have to have finals to maintain the status quo. By flunking out the dummies, academia retains its prestige and the brainiacs retain their power. Technically, Ben began again. Shut up, Ski cut him off. Ben's feelings looked momentarily hurt, but he continued anyway. You still didn't respond to my objection about the cheaters. Yes, I did, Ski retorted. They're jackals, but the lions are still kings of the savannah. So what you're saying, I interrupted again, attempting to bring the debate to a close so we could get on with looking up study guide answers, is that unless we're smart, then our professors really are trying to eliminate us. Spencer, Ski answered, cocking his head to one side and looking tired. This study guide is 6 pages long. Can you think of a better way? Oh, chirped Ben cheerily, instantly forgetting the brief argument. I've already finished 3 pages. Ski and I smiled at how little work we'd each have to do. As much as they'd like to, Ski sighed. No professor will ever eliminate Ben. Chapter 7. Wish. I glanced up from our notes and saw Julie gazing in through the room's glass door. I smiled a little and waved. She smiled back and opened the door. Hi, Julie, I said. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Ben's jaw drop as I greeted the girl we had all watched and talked about all semester long. Hey, she said, looking directly at me. I finished my paper. I bet that feels good. I felt like $1 million. This was too good to be true. She acted like she knew who I was, and it suddenly felt easy, natural to talk to her. It does, she admitted, then asked, why didn't you tell me your paper is getting published? Ben's jaw dropped far enough that I wondered if it would cause permanent tissue damage. I instantly understood what had happened. Ski had struck up a conversation with her outside of class and embellished it with his typical inventions. I never understood how he could keep from bursting out laughing as I struggled to figure out what lies I had to work around. Well, it's not official yet. Personally, I don't think it's that good. Would you like to join our study session? I asked, changing the subject as quickly as possible. Sure, she answered. Ski told me about it yesterday. Hi, Ski. Julie walked around the room and sat down between Ski and me. Once again, I felt grateful for Ski's audacity. While the rest of us were gawking and dreaming about Julie, he had actually walked up to her, introduced himself, and invited her to our study session, all without telling us so that when she arrived, the effect would be even more dramatic. Ski's patience was sometimes as extreme as his usual impatience, and now I caught him watching our reactions closely for the payoff. A few other students came and went, and the clock on the wall read 11:30 when we finished answering all the study guide questions and copying each other's notes. I had never enjoyed studying so much. For the first time, I wasn't anxious to finish. Anyone in the mood for waffles and ice cream? Ski asked. I knew he was only doing me a favor by trying to keep Julie around for a little longer. I wouldn't forget this. I've been sitting around all day, Julie answered. I don't dare eat again. I know what you mean, I said. I'm so restless. We should go cross-country skiing. It's beautiful at night. It was worth a try, I thought. Audacity, law of the jungle. Only the strong survive. That sounds fun, Julie said, but I don't have skis. I know someone who works at the outdoor rec center, and I'm pretty sure he'd be willing to get us a pair of skis tonight. I wasn't about to give up easily. Julie looked from me to Ski and back at me. All semester long, I had avoided eye contact. Now, I couldn't look away. Okay, sounds great. Adam wasn't thrilled about leaving his date to unlock the rec center and get us skis, but it meant 3 pages of notes that he would never have looked up himself. See what I mean? He asked with another reverse wink as I handed him the copies. Everything falls right into my lap. Ski and Ben decided to go for a midnight snack. I've never tried cross-country skiing, Ben had begun to say, but Ski cut him off. You're hungry, he insisted, gripping Ben's shoulder firmly. Let's go. Julie and I clipped into our bindings and started up the trail in Green Canyon a little after midnight. Do you cross-country much? I asked, trying to make conversation. I used to, Julie answered, but I don't know many trails around here. I found myself in pure heaven. Here I stood alone with the girl of my dreams, and I knew enough ski trails to keep us busy for months. I could keep her interest by bringing my camp stove along and cooking gourmet meals on the trail, along with star charts to memorize the constellations at night. I could bring her home for hot chocolate or spaghetti or even a movie. All the while, I would stare into her beautiful blue eyes and... How long have you known Ski? Julie asked. Just a few months, I answered casually. We met in class, in fact, but we hang out a lot. What kind of things does he like to do? Oh, I think he'd have fun no matter what he was doing. We'll all have to get together again after finals, she suggested. It grew quickly clear where Julie's real interest lay. I would have to find a new meaning of life but at least my wish had come true for tonight.